Subscribe for daily videos. Sex workers of Reddit, what's the weirdest kink a customer has asked you to fulfill? I'm not a sex worker, but was the GM of a strip club in Atlanta for 12 years. We had this guy come in every Wednesday with a McDonald's bag and go straight to VIP with the same girl every time. This wasn't ever odd to me as we allowed you to bring your own food and even order food while you were there. We had a free buffet during the day and ran the kitchen at night, so it wasn't odd for customers wanting to order out or bring in their own food. The owner did not mind it during the day as it left more free buffet food for the dancers and other customers. One Wednesday I was in the back talking with the dancers, and the dancer that went into VIP with the same guy was there when the waitress comes in and says he had arrived and she needed to head to VIP room 2 ASAP. She laughed and told her to hold on, she had to get her big heels out of her locker. The other girls started to laugh and one said she was jealous of the easy money the other girl was about to acquire. Curiosity got the best of me and I asked her what made the money so easy. She then proceeds to tell me that this guy stops at McDonald's before he comes and gets a quarter pounder with cheese, then puts it in a Ziploc bag, and goes to VIP. Her only job while in VIP was to step on the bagged quarter pounder with one heel so it mushed it, and with her other foot to step on the dude's nuts and slap him a bit. She said it was the easiest and funnest $200 she made and looked forward to every Wednesday. Put on her big heels and went to go step on this dude's hamburger and nuts. I've been told a lot of stories by the dancers and walked in on quite a few interesting scenes in VIP, but this one always stood out to me, and if someone ever asks about the weird things I have seen in my time as a GM of a strip club, this is the story I always tell. I was paid $200 to kick/knee a customer in the balls till he came. Only took about 4 times to make him come. Did it a few times. He even paid me $500 when I went out clubbing to do it in a corner of the club. Not super crazy, but I had a guy approach me through Reddit and ask just to be able to give me money with no strings attached. There was a couple-month period during which he would gradually send me money in multiple $15 payments spread throughout the day. Sometimes we text too. Sometimes we wouldn't message for a week, but he'd still send me money and quietly wait until I felt like talking. He liked when I ignored him. And if we talked, it turned him on when I was mean. He ended up giving me about $1,500 without him ever asking for so much as a photo. I was a cab driver for several years. Night shift, ghetto. Loved that job. I had a regular escort who always requested me. Probably because I didn't ask her for anything whilst driving her to her next job. She'd go up into an apartment, house, or hotel room and have me wait. Sometimes a full hour, but rarely over 15 minutes. I never argued because waiting and a return trip keeps the meter running longer. One time she came down after maybe 10 minutes. She looked half amused and half terrified. She said that the guy had her put on a muumuu and an old lady wig, then yell at him while he took a shit and, edit for clarification, during, he jacked off. Fucking weird. Freud would have something to say about that guy, no doubt. I think I might qualify as a one-time sex worker. One night, after riding the subway home from work, a guy followed me off the train and offered to buy the shoes off my feet. He stammered through some nonsense about being a sneaker collector and paid me $450 in cash for my old, sweaty canvas Vans. Totally worth the 2-block walk home in my socks. Not one myself. But I knew a reporter who had done a story on the infamous red light area of Mumbai. One of the stories that stuck with all of us is of this one guy who'd turn up at one specific date every month with a duffel bag. Now you'd think he'd bring kinky devices with him to use on the sex worker, but instead, he'd bring a full set of traditional Indian wedding attire. The sex worker told the reporter that this specific customer would pay her whatever she asked, as long as she'd wear the wedding clothes. He would respectfully wait outside the room till she changed, and then he would make her sit on the bed. He would pull up a chair, sit in front of her, and just look at her and weep. For 2 hours straight. Then he'd leave, without laying as much as a finger on her. Turns out, he had lost his wife to some freak accident hours after they got married, and it messed with him big time. One of the saddest stories I've heard, and it makes my heart ache immensely whenever I recount it. I once attempted to get into selling feet pics many years ago. This one guy messaged me and said he'd give me $200 if I was able to track down his identity in 30 minutes based off of a few clues he'd given me. He told me his state and job, and some surrounding area clues. Wasn't able to find him. Guess I'm not the next Sherlock Holmes. He was very heavily implying to me that he wanted to be humiliated to people he knew in real life and wanted me to have this power over him that I knew his real identity and could out him on his fetishes. Edit, I was unable to enter the feet pic selling community because, while my feet are very small and neat, perhaps cute to some people, apparently the angle of them isn't pleasing to the eye and everyone wants very long angled toes, which I do not have. Edit again. I seriously got gold for regaling my failed attempt to enter the foot porn community by being a bad hackerman/stalker, and I feel like I'm in a psychedelic dystopia. Had a roommate in college, 2000s, who did private adult videos by request only, basically expensive personalized video porn. She came home pretty bummed one day and I asked what was up. She said she had been paid $500 to put on an adult diaper and comically large baby bonnet and walk otherwise naked around the local college green space. The whole video was her walking around with her fingers in her mouth acting like a confused adult baby. At the end she was told to pee in the diaper and show the camera. When she thought she was done, the director asked if she wanted to poo in the diaper for $1,500 instead of $500, saying the client asked if it was possible. She declined immediately and the director was, I guess, okay with it. She was bummed she missed out on making an extra $1,000 because she had pooped before going to work. We both laughed so fucking hard. What a ridiculous thought. Darn, if only I hadn't pooped before work, I'd be making some real money. A client pays me to teach him how to blow his nose properly, making sure to say key phrases like blow it clear. Another one set up a fantasy scenario where I receive an expensive vibrator in the mail, but when I open it, discover a tiny man that's stuck in it. He said what you don't know is that man was a factory worker that got stuck in the vibrator making it. I was obviously confused where he wanted me to go with this, but suggested I should try using the vibrator with the man attached. Nope. The client replied, I can't come unless you destroy it. I love the lack of kink shaming here. Also, not a sex worker, but ex-military. Some guys aren't too shy about sharing even the most personal shit. One of my buddies had a kink with those horse girls that actually pretend to be horses. I mean, they gallop around on all four and jump over the obstacles, the whole 9 yards. He grew up on a ranch too. Said what's wrong with combining the best of both worlds? That sentence raises more questions than 11 he'd answered. Nothing particularly exciting, to be honest. Kind of disappointing. Slightly more interesting requests included pretending to be married and having to be quiet so we didn't wake the kids. Armpit licking, surprisingly common, pretending to be a cat and meowing, crawling around and drinking out of a bowl on the floor. Wearing pantyhose and being stretched and put into various yoga-type poses while he sniffed me. Met more interesting folk in my day job, I think. I feel obliged to mention the human toilet though. I never met him, but some of the other girls said there was a guy who would pay girls to poo in his mouth. Apparently they would line up outside his room to do it. Not judging, but I don't think that I could ever do that. Not a sex worker personally, but I used to manage and bartend at gentlemen's clubs many moons ago. One night while I was tending the bar, one of the girls comes down to my bar, and asks me for an empty beer mug. I give it to her, she runs off to the bathroom, then comes back out with it, full of urine. She then runs off to her customer, mug full of yellow liquid in hand. A bit later, she comes back with the mug, now empty, tries to give it back to me, and I tell her to throw it away. She does so, then proceeds to tell me that a customer paid her $300 for her to pee in that mug, and then he wanted her to watch him drink it, which she did. Beyond that, I saw guys come in, pay girls to clean mirrors and tables in the club, and they simply watched, though a few would even get up and help them with the cleaning they were paying them for. One guy would walk in, talk smack to every girl he could, and when one would finally get angry enough to slap him, he would pay them $100 on the spot. FYI, this dude was about 80 years old. Some guys would even come in at the start of a shift, would bring panties with them, and ask a few girls to wear the panties all day. They would then later show up at the end of the shift, and pay the girls $100 and retrieve the used and worn panties. A lot of weird and oddball fetishes out there, but to each their own. A customer had a fishing fetish, got fisher outfits for some girls like a raincoat or some shit and brought a fishing rod, boots and all, and the girls had to act like they were fishing him while he was laying on the floor and moved like a fish. Craziest shit I heard, but whatever floats their boat, I guess. Cammed for a bit. Kinks I disliked the most, and unfortunately one of the most common to encounter, were the doms who strolled into the chat already talking down to me, ordering me around and calling me pet names right off the bat. And then trying to keep that roleplay going during pay and kink negotiation, as if treating me like a sub would get them a better price and more access to my body. AskReddit. Even the rape fantasy folks were more courteous about getting consent. Weirdest kink though was contacted by a couple different guys who wanted me to close-up record myself farting into a jar and capturing it, and then mail them the fart jar. I didn't realize fart jars were in such demand. Another guy wanted me to record myself in my car, fully clothed mind you, as if it was a normal day, with my seatbelt on. He was very adamant about car safety. The request was to pretend like my car was a stick shift that had just broken down, and I didn't understand how they worked. He wanted me to jiggle the shifter, bounce in place, fiddle with controls and shake the steering wheel and grumble at the car as if frustrated for a few minutes, and then reach over and start searching through my car's manual and reading aloud the terms as if very confused, and aloud wishing that I had a boyfriend who could help me. I got paid $200 for about 10 minutes of pretending to be confused while sitting in my car. Didn't even have to show it. He was very sweet and patient about the whole thing. 10/10 would film again. Pro tip to y'all kinky people. Respecting boundaries and clear communication will get many camgirls to do some truly wild shit. I'm dude who did weird stuff during college to earn some extra cash. My job was to go to these afternoon parties organized by these filthy rich housewife and do catering service in our undies. Undies were provided by the secret friendship company. If they would like us, they would put in a currency note of 50/100ths in our undies and take a drank peek of the good stuff. Once a woman asked me to assist her for personal work to earn more cash. I told her that I will not have sex for money. She told me that I will not be required to have sex. I got on board. She took me to a room, paid me $5K, just to watch her slowly undress and cry. I initially got scared as I thought she is framing me for rape. But she calmed me down and only asked me to watch. She slowly undressed herself while crying really loudly, and then she lied on the floor naked, bawling like a baby. There were actual tears and stuff. It was really sad for me, but $5K meant a lot during college days. Finally, she silently stood up, covered herself, went for shower while asking me to leave immediately. She took my number and we made it a monthly routine. I was terrified every time she called me for the work. But I still did 7 to 8 sessions for the cash before I accepted that it's too weird for me. I couldn't sleep nicely for 2 to 3 nights after each experience. Not too fancy like other stuff here, but weird AF still. TLDR, rich lady paid me to watch her undress while crying. Not me, but I heard this story from a friend of a friend who worked in a BDSM club. She had this client that would come in with a few bin bags full of nettles. It's a stinging plant for anyone not familiar. Wikipedia says they're not native to a lot of places. Anyway, then they put a tarpaulin down on the ground so they could roll him up in it with the nettles like a joint. Then she just kicked fuck out of him, and apparently that's what got him off. After reading through this thread, I'm nowhere near the perverted bastard I thought I was. One of my favorite customers at my restaurant is SW, and she always tells me stories in exchange for a free boba. She's also the best tipper. The best story she's told me is a guy paying her $200 to just stand on his belly, nothing else, just stand there fully clothed. Dude didn't even jerk off or anything, and he made an appointment every time she was in town, lol. My mother was a full-time dominatrix basically my whole life. I grew up in NYC, and she would have her slaves come over and do all of our housework, get us groceries, etc. The most out there dude wasn't the grossest, or the most perverted. He was a Hasidic Jew who wanted to be a rug in our house. He would pay my mother to lay on our floor, and occasionally she would step on him, but mostly he just wanted to be ignored. She also had a guy who would come over and pretend to be a chair. I've got stories on stories. A lot of men are weird as fuck. Edit. Hey everyone. Apparently I freaked some of you out. I'm okay. I am a totally functioning adult woman. I never stepped on the dudes or was involved in any BDSM. My mom started working out of the house when I was a teenager, and I mostly heard things through the walls, or from my mom laughing about it later with her friends. I moved out when I was 17. Was it totally cool for my mom to make our dining room her dungeon? Maybe not, but she was a single mom doing her best, and I'm no worse for wear. She had an alternative lifestyle, and I accept that because she's my mom and I love her, and that's that. I don't really want to give any more info out publicly, but I would be happy to answer any questions any of you might have over private message. Thanks for all the concern, it was really sweet. I was a dom. There was this guy who was absolutely infamous, literally everyone knew him and had done a session with him. If a dungeon got a new girl on staff, they'd call this guy to see if he'd scare her off. He was obsessed with teeth. But he was a very old guy, so his fetish got mixed in with typical old guy things, which meant that he rambled at length about dental insurance. He was so infamous that one day I actually stumbled upon a little article written about him. Here there were also rumors that he paid desperate addicts to actually pull their teeth, but who knows. On the flip side, I also stumbled upon an article about a different infamous guy who used to come around to the dungeons and give us all pedicures, and he was genuinely a lovely man. We called him Foot Slut Giorgio. I ordered many a drink perch to top his carpet back in the day. But actually, neither of these are weirdest. Not my client, but did see the guy wearing reindeer antlers, like you might buy in the seasonal aisle of a drugstore around Christmas. Heard he liked to be called Rudolph. Seemed really off, maybe mentally challenged. Wish I was making this up because it makes me sad to think about what would have given him such a fetish. A guy hit me up for feet pics once, completely out of the blue. I know this basically bog standard. But I wasn't a sex worker, and whoever this guy was ended up hitting up about half of the guys at my college, 300 400 guys. It was all in the span of a week or so, and he offered good money per pic. All told, I heard he spent upwards of $5K trying to accumulate a collection of my college's male feet. Edit, $5K in total. He offered $5, $20 per pic, I think. I know some dudes sent them for free, just for the hell of it. I was kinda drunk when I got hit up, so I'm pretty sure I sent some in. I'm curious if they made their rounds on the internet now. Edit 2, won't give too many details, but this was in the South within the past 8 years. Also, Lamo, I've already gotten people who want to see my feet. I love learning about people's weird kinks. The first one that pops in my mind is the guy who would pay the girls to watch them play with their belly button. Nothing extreme, just caressing around it and maybe sticking your finger in a little bit for 20 minutes or so. He was also really nice. I think the strangest I've ever gotten was a man who had a huge fetish for Disney characters, and I'm not even talking just Disney princesses. He loved shit like Lilo and Stitch or Pooh Bear. He regularly paid me several hundred to dress up as his favorite characters and basically verbally abuse him. It was a sweet gig while it lasted, however strange. Nothing really surprises me anymore after that one. Edit, this blew up way more than I expected. I'll try and get to everyone's questions and messages eventually. Thank you all for being so kind and open-minded. I'm a dancer in a club and I love kinky guys. Other than the doms, I won't get into that whole thing. Kinky guys tend to be pretty passive and tip well. Mostly I meet foot guys, cuckolds, men who wear women's undergarments, and just overall subs who are open to whatever I'm into. After 15 years in the industry, I thought I'd heard it all. Then I met a guy who said he was into bones. As in, he bought a 45-minute room and just wanted to feel my skeleton. He was touching my collarbone and hips pretty hard. It wasn't the most comfortable dance ever, but he was so grateful to be acting out his fantasy and super respectful of me and my time. One of my favorite guys ever. Update, you all have really great questions and responses. I would love to answer meaningfully as I enjoy my work and love to talk about it. Just gonna take some time. I was a receptionist in a massage parlor. Had a guy who would ring before attending to request that a girl take a cold bath before he got there. Apparently, he would ask them to lie completely still as if they were dead. If he caught them moving, he lost his mojo. Most of the girls only saw him once and refused him thereafter. Creepy. Edit, we also had a dungeon. Fuck knows what went on in there, I did not want to know. Edit 2, this is then and now pick of the place. It's a pretty locally famous building and everyone knows what it is. The bottom right window is the dungeon. Top left was the schoolroom. https://www. flickr.com/rpsmithbarney/50722866949. Standard, not a sex worker, but I smoke cigars for fun and had a guy request to pay for a custom video of me trying to light a cigar with a broken lighter and get very annoyed that it won't light. Specific. Make a video where I'm sunbathing, and then I accidentally say the magic words, and then suddenly I get yucky slime dumped all over me. Did you ever wanna get slimed on Nickelodeon as a kid? Yeah, me too. Guess what? It's fucking gross. Feels like getting bathed on and it stinks like sour milk. That smell didn't leave my hair for a week. And if you're interested in what that looks like, someone posted a GIF from the video on here a few years ago. Edit, found the GIF, see no evil monkey, https://www. reddit.com/r/wet_topless_girl_slimed/question mark @_source=share and @medium=ios_rap. Online only. Here I had a man pay me $500 to sit on my feet in panties and a t-shirt and turn my back to the camera and play video games while ignoring the camera. Worth. Edit, since this blew up it was via cam online, so he wasn't there in person. Yes, I have below zero. I bought it day one, but unfortunately my PC has way too low specs for it, so it sits unplayed in my Steam account. Thanks for all the fun comments, guys. I did not expect this to go off like it did. You're all cool people. Not a sex worker, but my friend who has had a client that needed expensive gourmet pies thrown into his face while he was strapped to a chair. I am no sex worker, however this seems fitting. Somebody I know went out with somebody that would get extremely turned on by her singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to the point he'd come with no stimulation at all. Oh, I also had a guy out of his mind on Molly have me over for like 5 hours, but had me arrive at midnight, then proceeded to dress me in every Halloween costume he had ever worn and photograph me in pirate stuff, LOTR costume and a wizard W, a large staff taller than I am. Guy WHO makes the radiotts YouTube vids. Why didn't I get on the vid? I have hella upvotes and 2 awards. Kinda sad about it, frowning face. Watch this question be in an AskReddit text-to-speech video. I'm no sex worker, but I did know a guy who would roll a layer of tissue paper under his foreskin when he had sex. Was an awkward night when his girlfriend revealed she had to remove dried bits of tissue paper from her anus. I was on a job at a new construction house and I was talking to the detail cop. Now this house being built was in the high millions and had a police detail protecting it 24/7, paid out of the owner's pocket with the police getting paid out. The reason is because one of the workers had a fetish for wood and got caught on camera jerking off on the custom woodwork that was being done. I've only sex worked once when I didn't have enough money for a night out. Guy paid me £250 for me to sit on his back naked for 3 hours. He didn't do anything, just lay there, no conversation whilst I watched TV. I felt like I'd ripped him off, but he was very appreciative. There's plenty of fetishes I don't indulge but understand how people get off. But I struggle to understand what he was getting out of it. To each their own. Fuck it, no throwaway, because I was 19 and I'm 32 now, so the time to care has expired. I was a high-end hooker from 17 to 20 years old. Me and a bunch of other girls I worked with, some underage, had a pimp. He was a gay black man named Misha and he passed himself off as a photographer. That's how I got wrapped in it all. He was very popular and had lots of money. He even had an art gallery in a very distinguished district in my area. A lot of people didn't know it, but a lot of the models in his art were underage. He treated us like family at first. Like he was our protector. Anything we needed we came to him. And the girls became my best friends. We partied together, shopped together, emotionally supported each other when one of us would have a rough night with a bad client. He kept us on a steady diet of cocaine and money. You know, so we'd keep coming back for more and be loyal to him. Eventually the clouds rolled away and I saw him for what he was. We were his employees, not friends, and he didn't care about our safety. So I ran away. Anyways, during my run, my girls and I would be brought to these mansions filled with rich older men, most married, some famous or very well known for their success. I was too drugged up and blindsided to care who was who. That and I have a facial recognition issue, so I don't bother learning who's who, but I would randomly hear, oh, he's a politician or he's a football player from one of the girls, so that's how I knew. I had one client, late 60s. We called him Hatman. To this day I'm still not sure why we called him that. I always assumed he had made his big money owning a hat company. Who knows, I wasn't very smart back then. So Hatman had a very special interest. He would pay me to pretend I was his pet dog. I'd come over and he had a cage, a food and water bowl, my collar, leash. I wasn't allowed to speak. And I was usually naked. It would start with me laying at the foot of his bed or couch or on the floor. The more I immersed myself in the role, the more money he'd give me. And a lot of times it didn't even end in sex. I mean, he'd fondle me, what he called petting, but usually it was just me pretending to be his pet all night while he watched Sopranos until we fell asleep. I'm not gonna lie. Compared to what other clients had me do, this was the easiest and kinda nicest work I had to do. He was nice to me. He pretended I was his adored pet. Compared to my upbringing, it was nice feeling cared for. In the morning I'd wake up still in my collar, in his bed, with a big wad of cash on the bedside table, and he'd be gone, off to do whatever millionaire businessmen do all day. I don't know what happened to him or if he's even still alive, but from time to time I wonder about Hatman. I also had a client who was a famous skater who made lots of money skating, I guess, and he was only like 22 years old. Anyway, he would have me come over and I had to pretend to be his girlfriend while his actual girlfriend would dress up like a maid and clean the house around us while we pretended to do normal couple things like dinner at the table or sit at couch and watch a movie. Then she'd bend over in her maid's skirt or do something sexual towards me or him, and that would trigger the threesome. But it always had to start like that, lol. Also, he'd encourage me to belittle her and degrade her about her terrible cleaning job around the house, so he could punish her. Fun couple. In a special massage place, friend of a friend told me that one of her customer comes in regularly to get his ass cheek scratched for 1 hour. Not a sex worker, but a friend of mine is. She's not on Reddit, but gave me permission to share this story. She had a regular whose only request was that she sit crisscross applesauce and lift her shirt above her belly while using a finger to continuously draw a circle around her belly button while saying, "This is my belly button," until he came. Not a sex worker, but I dated a boudoir photographer for a while a few years back who would get some pretty interesting requests from clients. She got one once that was too weird for her to accept the insane amount of money people pay her for that service. A guy called in saying he wanted to do something like a couple's boudoir shoot. Nothing odd there, she's done those before, but he was kinda noticeably dodging any info about the person joining him in the shoot. Well, after a few minutes of him asking questions about pricing and different ideas for the shoot, she was feeling weird about the dodges, so she kinda hung the conversation on it. After pressing him about it, it turned out the other person he wanted in the shoot with him was his mother. Don't worry, though, it's not anything weird. Phew. Close call, almost got weird there for a minute. I had to slip a 45 record over the top of this guy's penis, then sit back with a cigarette and spin the record with my foot, take a puff and say, "Hi, my name is Jeannie and I'm 15 years old." Then blow out the smoke. I said this over and over until he came, then he tried to give me the record for a souvenir. I used to be a cam girl and I once had a guy ask me to slap American cheese on my tits. He is still my favorite. I'm not a sex worker, but the weirdest request I've had was on Reddit from a guy offering me $50 an hour to crush mealworms and insects with my feet. Oh, and the bugs would be supplied to me. Another time, a guy offered me $200 just to show up and meet him. Didn't have to talk or stay. Just collect money and leave. Which was obviously sketchy as fuck, and I didn't go. I often pay one to sit there while I just cry against her lap. This one is really gross, so read at your own risk. I never met this guy in person, we corresponded through email only. He sent me a ped egg, one of those foot exfoliators that looks like a cheese grater, and asked me to take a 5-minute video of myself using it on my feet. He had me use it multiple times over a couple weeks, specifically after wearing smelly shoes. At the end of the allotted time, I would send him the shavings in the mail, mixed with toenail clippings, so he could eat them while watching the video. Gag, but $300 is $300. Let's just cuddle all night. Not a sex worker, but after I posted to r/curlyhair, I got a DM from someone offering me $400 for a video of me cutting my hair start to finish. I'm a dude and had very long curly hair. I was honestly down, so I probed a bit. I asked who the intended audience was and he said it was for his Patreon, and sent me a link to a private YouTube channel, with tons of videos of guys with unruly hair shaving their head. I have to imagine this was quite lucrative if his opening line was to offer $400. I didn't do it in the end. He would only give payment for either completely shaving the head or a very tight buzz cut. I was really nervous for such a drastic change, and wasn't entirely convinced this was legitimate. Still wonder today what this was about. Not me, but my friend was doing cam work, and she told me that she was asked to show her ass, which she did, and then the guy whipped out a cucumber and slathered it in butter and shoved it up his ass. She tells me this is something she can never unsee. I'm an erotic writer, and I've had some strange requests for commissions over the years. I've written about the guy who wanted to be sounded by a Hot Wheels car before, but there have been a bunch of times when people have asked for things that have been unusual. I had one guy who was really into whatever a bird furry is, a feathery, I suppose, and asked for a story about getting a hand job from someone with an eagle claw. I pointed out that that would technically be a foot job, and he never got back to me. There was also one guy who wanted me to edit his writing and just berate him for all his mistakes in the comments. Basically, he wanted a sort of Microsoft Word student/teacher roleplay thing where I'd correct all his errors and tell him what a stupid little boy he was and how he was going to be a failure as a writer and no one would ever read his stuff. I didn't take the job in the end, because A, it felt a little too close to just talking this guy off rather than writing a story, and I was in a relationship at the time, and B, he offered about 2/3 of what my then editing rate was. If he wanted an editing job and to get off from it, my logic went, he should have been paying more, not less. There have also been a couple of people who've asked for writing based on an image prompt, which is fine, but usually it's a sexy woman or a particularly fetishy image, you know, latex, bondage, all that good stuff. One guy sent me a picture of a chair. A chair, by itself. It was a very nice chair, but I had to check with him before I wrote it in case I'd missed something about the whole transaction. In the end, I wrote a very nice little piece about a woman bent over it, waiting for her dom to come home and fuck her. Turned out he wasn't a chair fetishist, he just liked my work and wanted to see what I'd come up with. Everybody fucks funny. I've been asked to make some strange fetish videos forcing a slave to eat frozen semen that had shaved pubic hair sprinkled in it. White chocolate Lindor balls, 8 of them, in an ass, followed by a cock. A funnel, placed in the anus, followed by minty mouthwash poured in. Man lays naked while woman licks him from head to toe with lots of slobber. Tapping fingernails on hard surfaces. Chewing food while having the neck grasped but not choked. Stepping on toy cars while wearing high heels. Just to name a few. Note, I did all of them except the slobbery tongue bath. Some of the mouthwash one is here, https://www.pornhub.com/view_video. php, view key equals ph5e1bcd3a08seb. I used to sell a friend of mine sleeping pills. She had a client who liked them being injected to his dick and tried to fuck her before he went to sleep. Would take about 10 to 15 minutes before he crashed out. She was always paid up front and she would leave when he fell asleep. Not a sex worker, but I used to have a modeling page and I got a message through once asking me to take videos and pictures of me sitting on KINKS. He tried to claim it was for charity. Excuse me sir, but your dick is not a charity. Edit, I'm glad I amused some of you with this. Also note, I did not, in fact, sit on any cakes. That is a waste of perfectly good cake. Someone asked me to watch his 7-year-old wank over me on cam while I played with myself. He offered to pay my highest rates and tip me generously. I reported and blocked his ass as quickly as I could. Edit, holy crap, I didn't really expect any response. It's just scary because he could make more emails, but I like to think most if not all models would do the same. Edit 2.0, I work online, I don't meet up with people. I have no idea who the guy is. I can't even see clients' emails through the site, assuming that he even used a personal email to sign up. All I can do is block and report him to the site and hope that they deal with it correctly. My site takes stuff like that seriously. Many years ago, I used to drive escorts around from client to client. I was chauffeuring this one girl for the night and out of the blue, she got a call from a friend. Friend couldn't make the call so she contracted it to her. I guess they help each other out. Anyways, she's like, sure, I'll do it. I gotta go anyway. I drop her off. She comes out about 45 minutes later all showered. I figured they were doing it in the shower. Nope. She said Buddy wanted her to take a hot dump right on his chest while he cranked it and, get this, he paid her $1,000 to do that. The wet hair was because she used the shower after they had finished. This was a regular customer of the friend. She gave me quite an impressive tip and thanked me for waiting longer than usual. She would charge tricks for 30 minutes, or 1 hour, but most were 30 minutes calls and she would be done in 20. I've never heard of someone getting off by getting shat on, let alone paying that much to have it being done. Not a sex worker exactly, but I do write custom erotica commissions. Have had people request severe torture porn and child stuff. Obviously I won't write either. But one of the weirder ones was Muslim humiliation. A guy wanted me to write about an imam being beaten and humiliated in front of his wife. Very graphic in his choices of methods. Made me wonder how someone develops a fetish like that. TW, eating disorder, self-harm, degradation/humiliation webcam model here. I've had a lot of weird requests, but I don't judge. I have a lot of weird kinks myself. And for the most part, I can understand where they're coming from and why it's a turn on. But there are ones I won't forget. I have struggled with bulimia for years. When I was 18, I had a regular who liked me to describe what my vomit usually looks like. And once he wanted to pay extra to watch me vomit on camera and touch myself with my mucus bile-coated fingers. At the time, I was more than willing. Same guy asked me to light my tits on fire on camera. Being a very desperate, insanely unhealthy, and just plain dumb individual at the time, I did it. Used rubbing alcohol and a lighter. Had to stop, drop, and roll on my bed and smother myself in my comforter. Haven't done either thing since. And I don't accept dangerous requests anymore. I was, unfortunately, one of those kids who had an underdeveloped amount of common sense and learned tragically by doing and suffering the consequences. I'm lucky I didn't get a terrible burn. Not even a scar from that incident. More recently, I had a guy ask me to say a very specific phrase in a Valley Girl accent. While eating crackers and acting disgusted, wincing or rolling my eyes, looking uninterested, twirling my hair, etc. Stay queer, name. You know you're a cocksucker. Then I was asked to laugh after I said it. I went with an Ursula from The Little Mermaid maniacal laugh, nearly spitting cracker crumbs at my screen. He went wild over that performance. Got a nice tip and a 5-star rating. Years and years of hospitalizations, intensive outpatient psychotherapy programs, and medication cocktails later. I am studying for my professional certificate in data science, programming, with Harvard. I just got 89% on my data visualizations final smile. Used to drive security for sex workers. John would make any of our workers to buy a bag baby carrots, drive over, and pay for them to watch him shove them up his butt. That's not the end. Then he'd ask her security, not the driver me, the actual security that went with her one person, he'd then pay for an actual beating to the stomach till the carrots popped out. He paid grants for this treatment, 5-10K at a time, not including the tips he'd lay over to all of us. This isn't as weird as the top post, but it's a good one. I've had men with a financial domination fetish. Basically they want you to steal their wallets or demand money. Easy peasy. They get off by having you control their money. I used to drive around prostitutes and do security for them. Very regularly, one of the girls would get a call from this guy who would have her show up in steel toe boots and kick him repeatedly in the dick and face as hard as she could. He paid her $200 to beat him until he passed out, usually 6 to 8 minutes. That became a once or twice a week thing for well over a year I was driving her. I have a few clients who buy my poop so they can eat it. They send pics of themselves covered in it. They're absolutely over the moon about it. Another likes videos of me stomping on candy with my muddy shoes. I send him the candy and mud and he eats it. Always cheers me up. I used to have a regular who for 45 minutes would like to repeatedly be kicked in his testicles as hard as possible, as well as be stood on with stilettos in that area. He rarely flinched. There was also a guy circling the area for a few months where you would hear stories of him pulling out bags of bugs/worms and asking if girls can just step on them. I never encountered him, but a few of the girls I worked with did. Not a sex worker, but long ago I danced at a bikini bar. I had a regular who gave me $500 to sit with him between sets, take my shoes off and put my bare feet on the front of his seat. We wools talk and he'd buy me drinks all night as long as my shoes were off. Nice guy really. Housemate of mine, 1993 or 1994. We were students in grad school. She was apparently an escort some nights when she wasn't working on her dissertation and research. She never spoke about her clients or what she did, but the work itself wasn't a secret. One night just before Thanksgiving break, she came home looking like she'd seen a ghost, all quiet and probably in shock. And then she broke down and cried in a way that I'd never seen anyone cry before. It was abject grief and despair. I'll never forget it. She said the client that night was an older guy who just wanted her to talk and to hold him. That wasn't unusual, apparently. Quite a number of guys just want to talk. But this guy had a story, and wanted her to tell him that he was a good man. That he was a good husband. And that he was a good father. She said he said his son had died in Iraq the year before, and that his daughter had lost her cancer battle back in the late 80s. And that his wife had been committed to a mental health facility, and no longer recognized him. This poor guy just wanted some validation that he was real and that he mattered. He'd lost everyone he loved, and was just looking for any sort of human connection. My housemate said she told him everything he wanted to hear, that people knew him, and loved him and he was a good person. And she said he wept in complete silence while she held him. I never met the guy, I don't know anything else about him. But I think about him and lost souls like him all the time, now. I can't imagine going through something like that, myself. It's not my story, I wasn't the sex worker, so if this should be deleted, let me know. I'm a professional dominatrix, so I got this, smiley face, figging, Google it. Client wanted real concrete poured over him, even after explaining the stupidity of it. Still wanted it, refused. Was in the newspaper after he approached a random female to do it. They later robbed him cake inserted up rectum, wanted to cry and be laughed at. Ball busting is always a strange one in my opinion. Roman showers. I could actually go on all day to be honest, smiley face. When I was younger I got a part-time job doing phone sex to bring in extra income. My most unique kink was from a gentleman that liked BBW and Thea friends to sit on him, sweat all over him, and shove anything and everything inside him. Such as one of the BBWs being covered in spiky shoulder pads and essentially shoved up his ass. He would call for the same exact phone conversation every other night or so. If I would try and spice it up, he would be displeased. If it couldn't be shoved up his ass or a BBW sitting on his face, he wouldn't get off. I've had some other unique kinks, but not as unusual. Being a PSO was one of my favorite jobs. So many interesting people being so vulnerable. One of my best friends worked in a worker-owned strip club/co-op in San Francisco. It's the kind of place where you put $1 into a machine and a door opens, allowing you into a private booth. From there you can view the dancers in the nude, but only they can see you. She told me about a Japanese businessman who came by each week. He dressed impeccably and carried himself as an important person, but when he stepped into the booth he enjoyed being verbally degraded and would jerk off with pink glitter lotion. I once met up with a John who had described himself as extremely vanilla with an penchant for ass eating. After he began tossing my salad he asked me if I could muster up a fart to fart into his mouth so he could eat it. I was a little taken aback and described to the John the First was thoroughly clean and not gaseous back there, as M2M sex requires certain preparation, nor had we discussed the rate beforehand. With ease he offered to blow air up my ass and eat the farts I push out while generously raising my rate. I went home that night with the largest amount I've ever made and only had to toot on a man and get my ass eaten. I've never felt more powerful in my life. 10/10ths will do again. So I'm not a sex worker and this isn't a kink, but when my ex was in prison long before I met him, he carved up tiny smooth balls from the plastic of a toothbrush and then inserted them into the sides of his dick. So visually, it looked like a stick with random bumps all over it. Thought he had an STD at first. Definitely his kink, not mine. I had a particular gentleman who was fascinated by curtains and specifically a young lad, myself, playing with them and teasing him about how soft they were while he sat on the bed masturbating. I'd stand there in a jock and knee-high socks and say, oh, these curtains are so tasteful and soft, while rubbing them against my body, and that really did it for him. Reminds me of this one answer from u/for survivor to a similar post before. I once had a client who asked for me to take a fork, stick it in the shower drain, twirl up the hair inside, and eat it like spaghetti. It was a little chewy and smelled rancid, but the pay was good. I worked with a lot of street workers. As a cop, it's really beneficial to have a good working relationship with prostitutes. They are full of information. They are also very vulnerable and need keeping an eye on. One woman was known for catering to the nastier side of things. She had a client who liked to be outside. From there she would squat over him and shit on his chest. He would smear it over his chest before buttoning up his shirt and carrying on with his day. She said the worst thing was if she needed a shit before seeing him, she'd have to hold it in. So one of my tutors at university was an ex-homicide detective. He told us about this one case where he was investigating the murder of a sex worker and they were interviewing some of the other prostitutes who knew her, basically asking to see if they had any weirdos hiring them. One girl told him about this guy who'd hire her, take them back to his apartment and then get her to tie him up naked to a chair and throw cream cakes at him. I worked at a hotel for a summer when I was 18 and heard the most fucked up stories. I guess the prostitutes liked telling the front desk a lot about their encounters. The first week a girl told me a guy had her stick the wooden part of a plunger up his butt. I was so shocked at first, but I couldn't stop laughing when I thought about it later in my shift. I just busted up laughing in front of people and they didn't know why. I couldn't stop laughing typing this lol. Obligatory not a sex worker, but I animate hentai and I've gotten requests for having young video game characters giving birth to aliens. One guy asked if I was okay with vor, insects or eggs. And lots of feet requests, of course. I don't take requests anymore. Oh. I used to draw NSFW commissions on DA and had a lot of great furries and bronies who were mostly very polite and punctual with payment. I had one weird one where a guy asked me to draw a cube fucking a sphere, like with its corner. This is a question for the room. What if I don't have any weird kinks/fetishes, but it would be fun to try stuff out? Is there a menu? Maybe a kink sampler? I interview escorts and webcam girls in Southeast Asia, to do research on human trafficking. Most of the noteworthy stories, sadly, are horror stories. But one girl who did cams a few years ago had a guy that did a 3-hour private show and just kept asking her to imitate different animals, while fully clothed. He wasn't masturbating and didn't make it sexual in any way at all. Since she's Filipina, she didn't know what some of the animals were, like a possum, and would have to search them on YouTube. She brought in her clothes rack from outside and tried to hang on it like a possum. She's only about 100 pounds, but she bent it, fell, and busted her elbow open and had to go to the hospital to get a few stitches. He sent her Western Union for the medical bill at least. It's a much more pleasant story than when, for example, a guy who had sent her, another girl, money, thus he got her real name, had threatened to send screenshots of her working for the site. It's super taboo and also illegal to her friends and family if she did not expose her daughter on camera. She didn't end up doing it, she just got rid of her Facebook, and thankfully nothing ever happened. One guy I met up with was super into pain. He wanted me to bite the head of his dick as hard as I could. Another guy wanted me to put a knitting needle down his urethra. I'm not into kink shaming, but those are two I couldn't do. I'm a dancer, so we get a lot. The top weirdest that I can think of right this second is a guy that would come in and get the longest, most expensive dance, but instead of dancing for him, he wanted to spend the entire time tickling you. This doesn't sound so bad, but if you really think about when someone tickles you, it's not fun at all, and they usually stop within a few seconds. Having to endure it for 30 straight minutes is pure torture. Another guy would come in and get a cheap $5 dance, but pay a couple $100 if I would go into the back and give him the underwear I was wearing all night. They had to be black though, he didn't want them. The last guy I can think of is a regular of my best friend who works at the club with me. Two guys would come in and get a room dance with my friend and I. The guy I always did the dance for was one of the sweetest, nicest customers I've ever had to this day. His friend, however, was a married man who I'm gonna guess was frustrated with either his marriage or his sex life, because he was quite the opposite of his friend that I danced for. He would make my friend literally beat the shit out of him. More specifically, he would have her wear the tallest stripper heels, stilettos, she had, and repeatedly kick him as hard as she could in the dick the entire dance. Oh, and there's always the weird guys that get turned on when I squirt them with breast milk. You'd be surprised at the amount of guys that like that. More of sex poster than worker, but many requests to gain weight. I've had a few men offer to give me weekly allowances if I could meet their weekly weight goal. On one hand, it's insulting being a girl who's not super thin, but also encouraging knowing if I keep gaining quarantine weight someone will still want me. So this did not happen to me, but my friend told me about this guy who was really into period blood. He would pay to fuck girls while on their period and would request to get hand jobs with a used pad with blood on it. He claimed the smell of the blood alone turns him on. I'm commenting as the weird kinks to hear. One night while single and especially horny, I met a cute girl at a function, scored the home visit, and told her I wanted to lay her across my lap and spank her bare bottom. She assumed I wanted to fuck too, so midway through the spankings, she got horny, climbed off my lap to straddle and make out, but I told her I literally only just wanted to spank her. She laughed and began kissing me, but laid back down so I could keep up the spanking after my jaded reciprocity. When I was satisfied with my work, she tried to unbutton my pants, and told me not to worry as she'd brought condoms, but I still declined the sex. She was something between confused and offended, and left in a huff. In my defense, I was 20, and a bit sexually underdeveloped. Such is par for the course for kids raised in religious cults. Dated a girl for a little while that liked me to pee on her. And in her. Blew me away. She never got infections. We would do this in the shower so it didn't make a mess. It's really hard to pee through a boner. And stopping and starting again. The people that do this in porn are very talented. Not a sex worker, but on a first date, it was explained to me that this person would like to lay under a glass coffee table and watch their partner squat on the table over their face and shit onto the table while they masturbate below it with their mouth open. Not really something I was expecting to discuss at a wing shack. That date ended early, and shitless. They, preferred pronoun, had some drug that slowed heart rate. They wanted to inject that and lay in a bathtub full of ice to further slow heart rate to nearly stopped and body cold to the touch, nearly dead. My role was to come in after they had lost consciousness in the tub, pull them out, and bring them back to life with the heat of our lovemaking, so they come back from the brink of death, ideally, to find me using body heat and passion to save them. I could appreciate the whole cold/warm body sensations and waking up to find a sex act in progress, but there was a very real possibility of things going very bad. A friend of mine told me she used to live in Australia and had a dude who paid her hundreds of dollars to just go and take a poop in his toilet. He had a net in it that would catch it too. She told me that other than that he seemed like a perfectly nice and normal dude. They'd have a chat when she went over and everything. Was strange to hear. My wife and I are Pornhub stars, Rose Blur, but we started by selling panties and a guy wanted her to eat corn and shit and piss in the panties, like the whole turd, wrap it up in the panties and send it to him with a bottle of piss with my sperm in it. My wife posts nudes and videos around the internet sometimes. It fulfills her exhibitionist kink without breaking any laws and we get money out of it sometimes, so it's cool. It's pretty vanilla shit, but people will always leave kind of weird comments, and one time this guy DM'd her and asked if he could share a secret. He gets off on wetting himself in front of beautiful women. Like his whole life, he would pee a little bit while making eye contact with people and then go on with his day. My wife's a wonderful person, and after revealing that he had never told another living soul this information, she told him there was nothing wrong with him and that everyone has their thing and yada yada. It was the weirdest fetish we had encountered, but a lot better than the guys with abuse fetishes or just people who are generally dickish. He still messages her every now and then just to ask how she's doing, and I hope he's alright. Okay, I'm going out myself a little here. For a while, I was an online hoe on SL. I'm a bi male and played a bi female, and it was fun. Anytime they wanted verification, my so would get on mic and chat a little, and then I'd get back to the dirty typing. Fun times were had, turn on for me and my so, and it paid our internet bill for 6 months or so when we were really poor. Weirdest request I ever had was the burp fart expand guy. Wanted an RP where I was the more aggressive part of the hookup and then started to burp/fart and, while doing so, grow fatter and larger until I almost engulfed him. He started off by being real coy about it, saying his mistress was demanding he find someone to pay to live this fantasy for him, but it ended up being a regular thing. To the point of him running out of lindens and needing to beg his mistress for more so he could get another session. I'm no kink shamer, but it certainly wasn't my thing and definitely just work. But he was a nice guy and really loved that I was okay with it, so, all good. Not a sex worker, but I was in flip-flops and some guy asked if he could take a picture of my feet. I said no, and he said but they would just be for my own use, I wouldn't sell or share them. Like WTF, that didn't make it better. I definitely do not want to kink shame, and this is not weird in my opinion, but is definitely impressive. A man stuck 32 gummy bears in his foreskin. I think there are pictures on Reddit of this accomplishment. He wanted a threesome with his brother. I have never officially been a sex worker, but I have had several instances in the past where guys of Grindr would pay me to be with them. As a young drag queen at the time, I really needed the money, so I did what I had to. One particular guy was an artist, and paid me the equivalent of about $500 to have sex with him on top of a canvas, while he kept pouring paint on us while we were going. It wasn't the worst I ever had, but it was definitely one of the weirdest. I have some weird ones, but nothing beats the story a friend told me one time about a client of hers. He came in with a bag of cockroaches and she had to crush them in heels while degrading him by calling him a roach. We are in NYC, so it's only fitting to have a roach fetish, I guess. I had a man request that I do my makeup up like the Terrifier clown for a meetup once, super weird, but the money was good. I also had another guy pay me to pour a gallon of vegetable oil over myself and play in it for a custom video request. I was actually surprised at how much I enjoyed the oil, and honestly would probably enjoy doing it again. Damn, I thought I was kinky for liking my neck pleasured, but these are something else. Tickling his earlobes with a Q-tip while he jerked off. Unfortunately, I'm not kidding. Thanks for visiting Reddit Town Hall. Have a great day.